Great. Well, hello everyone. Today is the day that I'm just going to pin myself first of all. Right. Hello everyone. Today's the day that we're going to look at how to assess someone's balance for the purposes of inclusive skating. So thank you very much for allowing me to record this session. It's really helpful because I think this is one that could well be uploaded and used quite regularly in training going forward. I'd like to start the session, first of all, putting it into context. So what I'd like to do is share screen with you, and so that you're actually in a position to see what I'm talking about. And this is the Inclusive Skating Technical Handbook. And this is the 6th edition and it's page 9. So this is guidance that we've actually got for the skaters in terms of what we're actually looking for in terms of balance assessment, okay? And it's this a broad thing that determines what level someone is at when they're actually skating with inclusive skating. So you can see that BHF stands for balance, harness and frame, and that person requires balance facilitation and they've got limited ability to use their arms and their legs. Obviously, if they weren't able to stand up at all, then they'd actually be in a wheelchair. So Grant is obviously in the position that he's got to be in a wheelchair, but sometimes they can be semi-ambulant so that they can spend some time out of the wheelchair, in which case they're needing to have balance facilitation. Then BHF level 3 is when they're in that transitional stage where they can actually spend a little bit of time standing on 2 feet. But what we're looking at is they've got the balance on 2 feet, but the center of gravity is between both feet. Once they get to level 2, that's when this person is beginning to be able to stand on 1 foot upright. So they're not able to lean, but they are actually able to stand on 1 foot. And that ability to stand on 1 foot is really quite an important transition. At level 3, they're able to lean on an edge. So they're actually able to take the center of gravity, skate on an edge and actually lean while skating forward. Level 4 is when they're able to skate on an edge, but they can actually do that going backwards. And that's a lot trickier. Level 5, the balance is that they can actually change from one circle to another. So they could be skating from one circle and then they can go into the new circle. So they're able to change the weight from 1 foot to the other edge, and they can make it a very sort of like smooth transition. And at that stage, we also find that they're able to do back double 3. So they're actually able to work across the foot a little bit. Level 6, they're able to then start to do things like increase rotation across the edge. So they'd be able to do bracket turns. That's when they could build up rotation against the circle so that demands on the balance of the skater is much greater. And you'll also find that they'll be able to increase the rotation on the edge. And at that point in time, they're able to land axles. So you usually find that the ability to do bracket turns and axles go very, very similarly in terms of the skater's development on the ice. Level 7 is when they can basically do everything. They can both increase and decrease the amount of rotation on the edge, and they can do that whilst also changing circle. So that's when you can do proper counters and rockers and such like. And that's the most difficult sort of level of balance that you get. So that's what we're looking for in terms of how we actually assess the technical skating level for the skater. And that's got choreographic consequences. So what's one of the tools that you can use to assess balance? So what I'd like to share with you now is what is actually used generally by the skating or by the clinical people. So this is the Romberg test, and the Romberg test would be done, generally speaking, by a medical practitioner, and it would be done off the ice. Okay, so I'm going to let you watch this. I'm going to put it onto full screen because I think it's really well worth looking at. I've actually got this uploaded onto our coaching playlist on the website. So if you want to watch it in a bit more detail later on, you can watch it again. Okay, so I'm going to go to full screen and I'm going to let you watch this.
Let's evaluate Deb with Romberg test. Would you stand up for me, please? Put your feet together and hands out like so. Now we're looking for any imbalance problems. See how she's able to stand there very steady, no movements of the hands, no swing of the body. This is the first part of Romberg. Now, will you take your head back and look at the ceiling for me? See how she's still steady? That's the second part of Romberg. Now close your eyes for me. That's the third part of Romberg. Now I'm going to tap. Very good. Okay, now let's go back and review the three parts of the Romberg test and what they mean. So Deb, put your hands out like this. Now with the feet together and the hands out, if she sways back and forth, or in extreme cases, she may fall, just like a sack of potatoes, that indicates a lesion within the cerebellum. Now, Deb, will you take your head back and look at the ceiling? Now, if she starts to get dizzy or sway, that means we may have a lesion of the vestibular apparatus. And now, Deb, close your eyes for me. Now, with her eyes being closed, I'm going to tap her to see if she holds her steady position, which she did. And with her eyes closed, that's looking for a lesion within the posterior columns, because when we have her close her eyes, we take away her sense of position, and with that, therefore, we're checking proprioception. All right, now let's talk about how we would do it in our office. Deb, would you put your feet together, please? Now put your hands out like so. Now move your head back, look at the ceiling. Now close your eyes. Now I'm going to come in and tap. Good, thank you. That's the Romberg test. And as you noted, she was steady and had normal balance throughout. A note of caution. When you're performing the Romberg test on your patients, a true positive Romberg is where the patient may fall like a sack of potatoes when you have them put their arms out. So if you perform the test with the patient standing next to your examining table or next to a counter, when they fall, they could severely injure themselves. So put them in a place in your examining room where they are away from objects in case the patient has a true significant cerebellar lesion and may injure themselves as they go down. So be in a position where you can grab them if they start to fall.
Right. Now, one of the takeaways that I take away from that is that yourselves as assistant coaches or coaches should not be performing a Romberg test. That is actually a test to be done by one of the doctors. And we've often performed it when we're doing classification. Okay, so you do want to make sure that that it's not something for you to do, but it does show that there are tests that are available that allow you to be able to assess someone's balance, right? Now, what do you think are the limitations on, I'm just going to change that screen so that you can go and see this, like one that we're going to look at shortly. What do you think is the limitations on the Romberg test in terms of assessing balance for ice skating? What would you identify as any differences between the situation in the medical examination room and, well, skating activities? Lucy, are you coming off mute to be able to answer it? Or you put it into chat? Let's have a look, see if I can check. Wearing shoes instead of skates, exactly. That's the big difference. Now have a think about the skating blade. What's the difference between a skating blade and a pair of like normal training shoes? What's the difference? And you can speak out. You don't need to put it into chat. You can actually just come off mute if you're on mute.
The blade's much thinner than the sole of a shoe, width-wise.
Yeah, it is.
There's also edges on skates.
Correct, exactly. Anything else that's different about a skating blade?
It has a rocker.
It's got a rocker. That is actually the most important thing to know. It's not flat. The skating blade has got a curve. So one of the things that I've found that has been functionally very different in terms of the assessment of functional balance between doing the Romberg test when they're in the medical room and then watching them functionally when they're skating is how they actually cope with the rocker. So we've had quite a number of people who have passed the Romberg successfully in the medical room, but when you see them on the ice, that their balance is not enough to be able to cope with the rocker. Okay. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. Now, I thought what would be useful now is we'll actually start to watch one or two people actually sort of skating that have got poor balance, and I found this one. Okay, so let's see if we can see it. And I'm going to go onto full screen. Okay, right, let's go to the whiteboard. Let's see if I can new share. There we are. I'm just going to put that up there, right? Okay, now on that whiteboard, consider in particular the first skater that you actually saw there that was being supported by the three people. What do you think were the problems that you could identify in terms of if you were managing that session and assessing his balance? What are the points that are uppermost in your mind? Excellent one, Lucy. What Lucy's actually said is you would need numerous volunteers to help due to lack of balance. So it was very clear to you immediately that that person did not have any balance. Yeah. I'll wait for Vicky and Finley's thoughts on the matter as well, just in case they've got something to add.
I had pretty much the exact same, but I got beat to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I had the same. My only other thought was they had someone in front of him skating backwards, which I'm quite risk averse, so I'm not sure if that's the best idea, unless you know that person is very, very stable on their skates.
Exactly. Now, in terms of assessing their balance, do you think that person would have passed a Romberg test? Lucy's shaking her head, no.
No.
No, I don't think so. Do you think that that person should have been skating without equipment at all?
No.
No, I looked at it because he was quite big. So in terms of like management of that individual, that was 3 men. And would they have been able to save him if he was about to have a bad fall? Because it looked to me as if he had the ability to rotate and could have ended up slamming his face on the ice. And I think it would have been quite difficult to save him because he was quite big. The 3 men were quite big. And so that was probably helping to reduce it. But you were looking at a ratio there of 3 volunteers to 1 person. Now, in terms of assessment of balance, right, was his weight between the 2 feet? Yes or no?
I don't think so, no.
Well, do you know, I think you're right, because the weight was in between the 2 feet, but it wasn't underneath him. It was actually worse, because what he was doing was he was swaying forward and back. So if he's got his 2 legs there, what we're looking for is some stability where they can stand between 2 feet. And that's normally what I would be looking for if someone was going to be skating independently, that their center of gravity is going to be, if that's their head, that it's going to be going through their spine, through their hips, and that their weight is going to be between their 2 feet. That individual, his weight was swinging forwards and back. And so his head was going back and forward. So at no point in time was he stable on that ice. Okay. So what I thought might be quite useful would be then to have a look at the equipment. And can you see that page? Has it taken the share to the equipment page? I think maybe it's not. So just in case. I've just shared that again, right? Now, this is a page that we've got on the Inclusive Skating website, okay? And it's quite a useful place to find equipment. Now, when you look at that equipment there and you compare it to the walker that they had, I think particularly for the second skater, what's the difference between the balance for this particular type of frame? Because if you've seen it at the rink and you saw it last week, so that you're aware that that front angle is there, what happens to the balance when you're using that type of frame?
I'd say it's better because it's the ones in the video put the person's posture forward. That looks like someone would be a lot more sort of upright.
Exactly. So one of the things that I found that when we're using this one with our skaters who are learning how to skate, but they have got good potential to be able to balance, that they find their balance much quicker using this one. So very often we'll use these, and you know, the people will only have them for about a half an hour, but because they're able to get their head through their hip, through their feet, they can use this particular type of balance frame quite successfully. Was that first person good enough to use that type of balance frame? I loved Vicky's expression. Yep, you can say it, Vicky.
I'm not sure. I would probably say not at that point.
I feel your pain as well. I really didn't think that person was balanced. Certainly with an inclusive skating session with my normal group of volunteers, there's no way that I would allow that to go ahead. So let's see if we've got any other type of equipment that would actually help. Now, bear in mind, at the time capsule, we've actually got harness, and we've had some people that are very, very, poor muscular control, and they can actually use the harness. So you do have a full-blown harness, but we've got some other products that are available. Okay, and we'll come back to Jacqueline in a little while, right? But there's this type of frame, and if you have a look at that, you can see that it's been specifically adapted for people that have got balance issues. And what do you notice about? You can see where I've got the arrow.
He's strapped in like a harness.
Strapped in. Yep. Exactly. And that comes in 3 different sizes, and it's got different harnesses, and they're all color coded. Now, if that product was available, that possibly might be enough to support the person. I'm not sure that it is, because that person was quite big as well. So let's have a look. We've got another one. Okay. have a look at this one. What do you think of this one in terms of for that individual? What do you notice about the way that that harness would be used by the individual?
It's got support for the spine.
Correct. Correct. Is there any potential, if that is correctly fitted, this is a bespoke product and it holds that person in place, and it comes in different sizes. This one is the kid walk, but there are equivalent ones that are available for adults, right? Would you, if that person had a bespoke product made for them, would you be okay about them skating?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
too. Yep. The only problem with that one is it's very expensive, but it would certainly tick the box. So it does mean that the person would have to have like better equipment. You know, it'd be far better to have that type of equipment in place and to make the adaptation that way. It's much safer to do that rather than to have 3 individuals. But what that individual shows you is just how important it is to do a balance assessment and certainly to do an initial assessment of the person off the ice. One of the things that I look for when I'm looking at people coming onto the ice is I'm looking for where's the head, where's the hips, and where's the weight going through the spine. And I want to make sure that they've actually got the weight in all 3. And I have seen skaters coming in to skate at the rink, and when they're standing with the skates on, I can see them lying back on the back of the skate. Absolutely no way are they going to be allowed to skate independently on their own, because if they're not able to stand on skates off the ice, they're certainly not going to be able to do it. And when they're at that stage, then you're really looking ideally at this type of equipment that they're going to have to be able to use. Okay, now what I would like to do now is go back to Jacqueline, right? Because one of the things that happens with a lot of the skaters is that they bring in their own equipment, and Jacqueline particularly likes her balance frame because she's used to it. And if she gets tired, you can see it's got a little seat so that if she gets tired, she can turn around and then, you know, she can be taken off the ice. Looking at Jacqueline, do you think that Jacqueline has actually got a problem with balance? What do you think? Just looking at her, what do you think the issues are in terms of, you know, if you didn't know anything about her, what do you think the issues are for a skater that looks like that?
Her weight's too far forward.
Weight's too far forward, right? Do you think it's a balance issue, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's something else, but I
think
don't
it's
know
the
if
handles and the arm position on the.
Yeah. Vicky, finish what you were going to say.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'm thinking it's not necessarily a balance issue because I've watched Jacqueline skate before.
That's fine. Use your prior knowledge. I'm quite happy for you to use your prior knowledge.
I think some of the issue isn't necessarily balance. I think it's muscular or musculoskeletal kind of, rather than actual balance.
Yeah. Now, the physiotherapist came in one day and she gave me a very good piece of advice. And she said that a spastic muscle can take something in the order of like 3 minutes for it to stretch, for her to be able to stand up in the skating boots, because the muscles are really tight. So if you think about how tight those muscles are, that you can actually see that what's actually is the tightness in the muscles. It's because, you know, they're overly contracted. So she's leaning forward, but I'd be very surprised if there was a fundamental problem with her balance. It's more muscular relating to her. Do you ever see her swaying around, or does she actually look as if she's got quite good control in terms of her central nervous system functioning? Yeah. Lucy, do you want to add it? Because I can see, because you do orthotics. So what sorts of issues, looking at it from your background and your expertise, could you add to it?
You can see that when she is working on the skates, when she's standing, it is muscle contractions, and you can tell the difference between the nerves and the muscles. And in Jacqueline's case, it does look like more musculoskeletal due to the movements that she's having when she does skate. It doesn't look like nerve.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that we've done, I'm now going to show you some videos, right, that I've got sort of like prepared. And these are from the competition. We're actually going to watch Jacqueline. I'm going to go to the I'm just going to put that on to pause. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, in terms of balance, do you think that Jacqueline's got balance that is now comparing her to the person that you saw on the original video from the US? Where's Jacqueline's balance?
Compared to the person in the first video, it's more centered.
Yep. In fact, she's probably got very good balance because, well, her weight was always between the 2 feet. She's beginning to try to get up onto 1 foot on occasion, but the whole time the head was staying really quite well centered over the feet. And even although on occasion she was leaning forward, she was actually, it was more because she was working against the equipment and she had control. She was able to go forward and she was able to come back. So did you feel at any point in time that her only having one volunteer to support her was the incorrect decision?
No.
Yeah. It looked pretty well spot on in terms of where she was. Now, when Jacqueline first started and there was less control than there is now, because bear in mind, she's been training for quite a number of years. When she first came onto the ice, we would have a wheelchair at the back of her. We would have 2 people on either side and 1 person in front, and she had her own frame. So there was a lot more set up, because what would be the issue that we would have had at that stage that is different then to what she's like now? What would be the significant differences that would come to your mind?
Her center of gravity might have been not as good.
Yep, yep, yep. Because she would probably have had less practice.
Mhm.
So one of the things that you would think about is, you know, where is this person starting from? So if they've been spending a lot of time sitting in a wheelchair, then you've got to take them on on the journey, so that they've got the ability and the time to learn proprioception. Because one of the things that you're doing the whole time that you're learning how to do jumps and spins is that you're improving your proprioception of your. Who's that in my front door? Don't see there's anyone. There might have been a fox or something. Yep, sorry, I think it was just a fox going by my front door. That there might have been some poor proprioception due to lack of experience and the opportunity to practice. So giving people who are, for example, sitting in wheelchairs, or they're in that transition phase, the opportunity to move their bodies is really important, because what you're doing is you're building up proprioceptive like skills and ability. Now, I want to let you have a look at someone else who you've probably seen before. See if I can sort of see her. Hoping that I've actually got her on this one. Might not be on this one. Actually, I could do that one, but I know who I want. I'll just do a quick search if I may. Search. Maybe not that. Ah, perfect. Excellent. This will do lovely. Okay, I want you to watch this one. Okay, I'll just stop share for a little minute. Let's have a little bit of a conversation about that. Let's go on to gallery.
Hi everyone, my name's Nikki.
Oh,
I have been asked to do this video.
Forget that. That'll come up again at another time. Okay. So what do you actually think of that balance assessment? And I'm going to give you all the opportunity. Finlay, you go first, then Vicky, and then Grant and Lucy. And what's your thoughts generally about how you would assess what her balance is on the skates?
I think she had good balance, because in the video I also showed her doing 1 foot stands, and also doing twizzles.
Mhm.
So I think her balance is more centered than the videos at the start of the session.
Yeah. Okay. Vicky, what's your thoughts on it?
I think similar to Finley, her balance is good and she can shift her weight from what to go onto one foot. It's a little bit forward.
Yep.
She is leaning forward, but I don't know whether she's learnt to compensate for that or it looks more than it is. But it doesn't seem to massively affect her in terms of what she's doing at the moment.
Right. Lucy, what's your thoughts on it?
Just the same as the other guys, you can see when she is skating, she does lean forward, which may help. Some people do lean forward to help with balance sometimes. But you can see that she does have quite good balance because she can go from one foot to the other and stand on one foot for a long period of time. She can do it all quite quick. It shows her balance is really good.
Good. What do you think is the cause of the leaning forward? I would regard that as coming with what I would call stationing gait rather than a balance issue. I would agree with you that she's quite well balanced in that her brain seems to be able to hold her steady. So I think if she was doing the Romberg, I think that she would have probably have ended up passing the Romberg test, but she's definitely leaning forward. Okay, does anybody have any idea what might be going on there in terms of why she might be choosing to lean forward?
I could be wrong, but I think it's more of like a safety thing. Because if I was to lean forward, you feel, I don't know, kind of closer to the ground. Like you have more, like you can save yourself a little bit easier. But if you're leaning backwards, you're going to potentially hit the back of your head.
Yeah. So it could be reaction time. She feels that she's not got enough balance or control or proprioceptive ability to cope with adjustments. If she was, because bearing in mind that the skate's rockered, so that she's obviously not got the ability to rock her on the skate, okay, and actually to be able to cope with that. So she's steady enough, but she's not actually got very much in the way of control over how she's actually able to stand. At no point did I actually though see her standing completely upright. Right. So when you think about every time that she skated on one foot, she was hunched over. Right. So let me, I'm just going to go back over. I'm going to share the screen again. There we are. Going onto this, right? And I want you to just going to go back to this sheet of paper, right? Remember, this is the technical skating levels that we've got for how we're trying to like broadly categorize balance, right? So she obviously doesn't require balance facilitation, right? That was the person that you saw at the very beginning. Do you think that she's level 1 or do you think that she's level 2?
I'd say level 2.
Right. Is she at the bottom of the range or is she at the top of the range of level 2?
I think she's more close to the top, in my opinion. Maybe in the middle of 2.
What's your thoughts, Vicky?
I was actually going to say, I thought the opposite. I would probably say because it's the upright part that's, I don't know whether that means on the flat of your blade and not leaning on an edge, or if it is posture.
Yeah,
It's the fact that you're actually balanced. She's not upright. She's got balance on one foot, but she's leaning forward to be able to do it. She's not actually able to completely hold the body erect. So in actual fact, she's actually more limited in terms of what she's able to do. Like, so for example, when she was trying to do the turns, she lost the balance when she was trying to turn around on one foot, so that she's struggling to be able to do a lot of skating by doing turns or spins, because to do the spin, you've got to be really upright. And she's really struggling to be able to do it upright. Now, I want you to have a look at someone that is a little bit similar, right? Maybe we'll go to this playlist, and I want you to have a look at Meg McFarlane. Let's see if we can get Meg. I want to see what you think of, there we are, good. Great. Okay, so we'll stop that share for a wee second. So what did you think of Meg's balance? And you can use Meg and Cassidy and the other skaters as a point of comparison to help you with that one. Finlay, you first, then Vicky, and then Lucy.
She had a lot more, she was a lot more upright.
Yep.
And she was also able to shift her weight a lot more easily.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Good. Vicky, what would you like to add?
I think the going forwards, her balance is better than when she is going backwards. You can kind of tell she's not quite as balanced and maybe not as comfortable on her back edges as she is going forwards, but she is much more upright.
Yeah.
And she can rotate, if that makes sense.
That's right. As soon as she got upright, you could see that she could actually spin because the body was upright enough to allow the things like the 3 turns to start happening and the spins to start happening because she'd actually managed to get the upright balance. Lucy, what would you like to add to that?
I was just going to mention, as you said, the spins. When Megan, the first video we seen, when she did her spins because she was leaning forward, you could see the balance and her weight was more forward, so she fell out of the spin. But compared to Megan in the second video, because she was straight up, she managed to hold the spin and didn't fall out of it. And you could totally see that the balance and the comparison, the differences in the two.
Exactly. Did you notice any difference between right leg and left leg? I mean, I know this skater really well. So, I mean, I've been watching her for years. Do you want to have another look at her? Yeah, it might be sort of like quite good because it does actually help quite a lot. Hold on a second. It'd be really helpful if I shared the screen first of all. So if you just give me 2 seconds, I'll share screen again. Because the people that are going to be doing the assessment of balance going forward will be you, not me. Look. I'm just going to play this again and compare right leg and left leg and see if you can see any difference. I'm going to pause that there because I think that is actually one of the most important times. What did you notice about our stroking action?
It looks like she's more balanced on our right leg than our left leg.
Exactly. I'm going to put that back again. I can get it to go back. See if it'll let me. Yeah, it will. Okay, I might have taken it a bit too far back. Right push, right push. She did 3 pushes and they were all on the right leg. Is she equal on both sides?
No.
No.
Now, bearing in mind that you obviously you saw the Romberg that was done earlier on, do you think that that's a balance issue or do you think that it could be something else?
Something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So something may have happened, but there's definitely a weakness on one side rather than the other. Does it have an impact on our balance?
No.
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 Good. Okay. Right. But what I'm really glad though is that you started to be able to look at the person and look at the difference in their functional balance. So let's go back to this again, right? So let me just share that screen so that you can actually have a look at the technical rules. Okay. Right. So bearing in mind, so where do you think that Megan is in terms of the balance functional assessment on that scale there for skating level?
I'd say level 3.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that she's quite a clear level 3, right? Able to lean on forward edges, for example, forward outside and the forward inside. But do you think that she is transitioning yet to level 4? And what would be the problem with her moving from level 3 to level 4? Grant's got something to add. Tell me, what did you say, Lucy?
I read it out and because it said being able to lean back, and I think it was Vicky earlier that said she finds it more difficult. From the videos, it looks like she finds it more difficult going backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
So that's what we were talking about, comparing the
Yeah.
two.
Exactly. You can see that she's definitely going to struggle a lot more when she's getting onto the back edges. She's not got quite enough control. And I think being also so one-sided would make it more difficult because the pushing action for being able to get speed up going backwards is more difficult, it's more challenging, takes more balance and more control and more proprioceptive training to be able to do backward pushes and be able to lean on the back edge. So so what you've got there now is you've actually had quite a good range of different types of skaters. So I've shown you that. I'm just trying to check all the things that I had for you. Yeah, and there was, I want to go back to, let me see if I've got the page open. Right, okay. Because this is a very common balance issue with beginners. I'm just going to change the stop share. I'm going to change it to this other document that I've got. Right, okay. Now this is a manual on adaptive skating from the United States. So they've got this sort of like manual that you can pick up. But what I quite liked about it was that they had a picture of a volunteer with someone that is obviously a new skater on the ice. Now, in terms of, what do you notice about that person in terms of a balance assessment? And I'll let you take it in turns. Finlay, you've gone first every single time, so we'll move it around a little bit. Vicky, can you go first, then Lucy, and then Finlay at the end?
I think kind of hard from a picture, but I think it looks like his balance is a little bit further back.
Yeah, it is. Anything else that you notice? I mean, I know that you might be sort of like struggling to see a little bit.
Nothing. The only thing that's jumping out to me is it's really good that they've got him wearing a helmet. Because I think with until you know someone's balance, if they're a beginner, I think that is a good idea.
Yeah, when you start to do these balance assessments and you can see the fact that they can fall over, particularly if they've got, poor balance, you can see the doctor saying that with the Romberg test, all of a sudden you think, something, helmets are a really good idea because I don't know anything about you, Yeah, you're absolutely right. Get a helmet on them, right? Lucy might be able to see a little bit better. Lucy, and also she does orthotics. Lucy, what do you notice about his feet and where the balance is?
His feet are turned in. His feet are turned in, so he's holding his balance on like the insides of his ankles rather than the top of the blade.
Yeah, absolutely. So he doesn't look in any way balanced to me at all. He's definitely a two-footed skater. At this point in time, there's no way that skater is going to be transitioning to one-foot skating because that weight is most definitely between the feet. And then what Vicky picked up was the fact that if anything, that the weight is a little bit on the back of the heels as well. Okay, Finlay, we might have stolen all of your thunder, but have you got anything to add?
The first thing that I saw was he was leaning a little bit far back, and after I saw the feet as well. I don't know if it's really hard to tell from a photo, but he looks maybe a little bit over as well.
Yeah.
I can't really tell.
Yeah. Do you think that could potentially be the fact that he might be leaning on the person that is trying to help him?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. As you said, it's hard to tell from a picture, but that's one of the difficulties that you've got if you're going to help someone as a volunteer, that if they then start to lean on you, they're actually going to put themselves off balance and it's actually going to make them worse than they might otherwise be. So with him, I would be inclined, that's why if you're going to help someone, I much prefer them to be using the barrier because the barrier is really nice and strong and they can lean on the barrier and they're not going to necessarily fall over, or to use our equipment. Right, particularly, the one that we've got that's got the very extreme like handle supports where they can really put a lot of weight down on it. The advantage that you've got is that they can have the weight on both of their arms and they're not going to be leaning to one side because they're leaning on a volunteer. It's actually going to help them to get balanced. Okay, right, so I'll just stop that share. Now let's go back to the whiteboard because you did a really good whiteboard earlier on, right? And what I would like you to write down on the whiteboard is, what was the most important thing that you've just learned in today's session? Oh, wow, really good one. So Vicky said that a person's functional balance can be very different when they're in skates compared to when they are off the ice. Excellent point. So that goes back to the whole point about the skating blade having a rocker. Okay. And the one at the bottom, was that Grant and Lucy? Yep, it was. The most important thing we learned was how important it is to have the weight through the center and how quick this can alter balance and skill level if not completed properly. Also assessing the full body and not just looking at the skates, for example, leaning forward. And that's really good point, because that's the thing that we're looking at in terms of when we're assessing balance. We're looking at the whole of the lineup of that body to see where the balance is on the skates. That's a really good one. And Finlay, how the different centers of gravity and feet position can affect your balance and change how much balance you have on the ice. It's really, really good. Right, good to stop that share. Right. I have to be honest, I really enjoyed this session. What's your thoughts on today's session? You can all come off mute.
It's interesting because I'd never thought of it as something.
Yeah, you can finish off and then we'll let Finlay jump in.
Yeah, it's never something that I've thought about. Like, I don't know if you know this, Margarita. You probably do, because wisdom of knowledge. But for people with nystagmus, can their null point affect their balance if they hold their head in a certain? Now I'm just going to be looking at myself when I'm on the ice going, that's why. But it is interesting because some of the things that I struggle with now, I'm wondering, is it a balance issue?
Yeah, and because you know, if going back to the Romberg test, you could actually see that when they made the people shut their eyes and they weren't able to use their eyes, that it did definitely affect the balance because they were getting less information back. And one of the significant things that can be very different is that someone who's been blind from birth and has not had the opportunity to develop that type of feedback system can often be better adapted than someone who loses sight. So
I was wondering that, because didn't the video we watched say that gentleman who was blind had lost his sight?
Correct. Exactly. As you can see, he was struggling all over the place, so much so that I wouldn't have let him skate. I'd have had him with equipment and I'd have had a lot more protections, probably on a harness actually, because there was nothing physically wrong with his body, that, you know, that there was no problem with his spine that you could detect. So I'd have checked that obviously with the doctors, but I think I'd have been looking at a harness type situation until he actually developed the ability to develop the proprioceptive skill. And you could see that with Jacqueline. Jacqueline's balance is actually very good because as she's developed the opportunity to train, she's actually fundamentally got quite good balance. It's not actually a problem with that. Finlay, what do you want to add to that?
I never really thought about like balance on the ice that much until maybe about 2 months ago, whenever I was starting to like take my doubles seriously. And after that, I never really thought about just how much like a different, like maybe like a centimeter or two can just shift your balance completely.
Exactly. I think particularly when you're trying to rotate and you're trying to get so much balance over, you know, your rotating foot for both the center of rotation and also for the landing, because it takes quite a lot, because you've actually got to shift all the weight from one leg onto the rotating leg to be able to rotate the jump. So the balance is extremely fine, you know. Lucy, what would you like to add to finish off? What was...
Grant and I were both talking about the technical handbook, and we thought it was good that although you may look at someone and say they either have good balance or don't have good balance, the technical handbook has certain levels for them, so you can put them in a category and then they can work from that and go up the levels or down the levels depending on their ability. And I think it's better that way. Even when we were watching Megan skate, and she was really good forwards but not so confident backwards, and it was good to see that she does have good balance and she is a good skater, but putting her in that level helps you understand her abilities a bit more.
Exactly. And it's really important because what it does is it means that everyone can get included, because within that spectrum, there's an activity level for absolutely everyone. And you could even see like the chap that had lost his sight and had absolutely no proprioceptive skill for his current functioning at that point in time. You give him the correct equipment, he could be perfectly safe on the ice. So the important thing is to assess the balance, work out where they are, what they need, and it could be adaptive equipment, or it could be opportunity to practice skills, time. You know, you saw that with Jacqueline. Once you gave Jacqueline time to be able to get the weight into the boots and time to be able to access training, she actually got quite good balance. And you can see the improvement that, you know, can take place in a skater if you give them that opportunity. And being honest about the assessment as well, so that you know, you take a good look at them, so that you're not just looking at people generally, you're analysing that skater. And a lot of your risk assessment for your skater when you're first taking them onto the ice will be, can they stand up on their own? Are they balanced? Are they going to go forward or back? Have they got the weight in the skate? If they're steady, you've actually got a good chance of them being able to skate, because even if they've got the weight on 2 feet, as long as it's in the centre and the head's, you know, over their feet, they're pretty good. The ones where you've got the problem, the ones that are swaying, the people that I think would fail the Romberg completely, they're the ones that you've got to be extremely careful of. Okay. Personally, I've loved this session. We better finish off now. So thanks everyone. And I'm just going to stop the recording now.